Shalom, this is Gene with Beit Bamidbar Messianic Outreach, and this is our Wednesday evening Bible study. This is the 23rd of July, 2025, and we are going to be looking at Galatians Chapter 3 today, at least the first part of it. So let me get up our bulletin for the week, and we'll go on. Let's see. Now we get that out of the way. Get this out of the way. Hey, everything's behaving. Okay. Beit Bamidbar, House in the Wilderness, if you need a translation. It's kind of a nod to the people who like to live remote out here in Idaho. So, House in the Wilderness. Okay. Our bulletin is for 30th day of Tammuz, 5785, or otherwise known as July 26, 2025. You notice that the bulletin is dated a few days away from here. This is our Saturday morning service bulletin, and so the dates, we're a little bit ahead of the date for the bulletin, but that's okay. We can work this out. We're rough and tough. Our regular service for the congregation is at 9:30 in the morning on Shabbat at the Idaho State Veterans Home in Post Falls. The address is here. It's open to the public. You are certainly welcome to come and join with us. It's just a short little trip from Southern California, but if you get started now, you should be able to make it in time. We have a regular Shabbat Shachrit prayer service. Do our normal announcements, and then the reading for this Shabbat is a double portion. So it's Parshat Matot and also Maseh. Matot is tribes, and Maseh or the journeys of the recounting of the 40 years wandering around. Although in our current reading, they're already there just on the east side of Israel is already there just on the east side of the Jordan, waiting to cross over. But there's a few more details to take care of before we are done with Devarim. Okay, continually pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And if you're not familiar with the more handwriting kind of a script, this says Am Yisrael Chai. And then, of course, continually pray for the peace of Jerusalem because they need it and we want it. Okay, next week's reading is Devarim, the beginning of the last book of the Torah, and also this week's reading. Let's not forget Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek. Be strong, and may we be strengthened, which I flatly forgot to put on the bulletin. Oh well. Okay, our weekly meetings during the week, we just have our online meeting here on Wednesdays. And again, if you're reading this, you made it online. Okay. Upcoming events, the only thing coming up immediately is we have Rosh Chodesh this coming Shabbat evening, Friday evening. And then that's the rest of what's left on July for stuff. Next month starts a fairly involved month of pretty much all traditional activities and special days, and we'll start covering that next week when we get there. Okay, and then we end up we'll be at Yom Teruah, traditionally called Rosh Hashanah, at the end of September on the 23rd on Tuesday. I'm sorry, Monday evening to begin with, which is a Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, and also the beginning of what we call it's Yom Teruah, the Day of Blasting. That's the biblical name. Traditional name is Rosh Hashanah, and that's when we start the High Holy Days. So We are getting close to another big batch of holy days and holidays, um, and we'll have a lot of fun. Okay, any questions, comments, or rebukes with regards to our bulletin?
Mm, nope.
Okay, let's get into our study then. Here we are. Okay, Galatians chapter 3, starting with verse 1. We've been going through a sort of an introductory period um, where Shaul in Hebrew, which means asked or requested, also was used for the word for prayer, used in Hebrew. Paul or Paulus in Greek, and I tend to interchange quite a lot between the two, between Paul and Shaul, whatever suits my brain as it's going out of my mouth. So, um, okay, we're going to start chapter 3. Paul is getting to his main point. He's pretty much finished up his introductory section in chapters 1 and 2, explaining how he got from being a persecutor of the believers in Yeshua to being um, the one of the main theologians for for the movement of the Messianic groups. So um, we're getting into some of the other arguments that come along. He starts off with a very kind statement: "You stupid Galatians, who has put you under a spell? Before your very eyes, Yeshua the Messiah was clearly portrayed as having been put to death as a criminal." So, I won't say already because we're already in chapter 3. Um, but he begins another general section in what he's getting to in his letter. He's showing a certain amount of short-temperedness with people who are getting sucked into thinking they have to be um, Pharisees in order to belong to the family of God. Now he's writing primarily to Gentiles who are in the region of Galatia, which is this central area in what we call modern day Turkey. The region was called Galatia, and it was inhabited mainly by Gauls, um, but since the Galatians. Okay, the Gauls, of course, were um, they had migrated from Central Asia, I should say, and was pushed down into the area of what became Galatia. And they eventually got pushed out of that territory after this era. They got pushed out also by other tribes coming in again from Central Asia. Eventually migrated up into in what is now modern day England, and even got pushed further north to Scotland and Ireland, where they're generally known as Celts. And then, of course, those people migrated to Boston and started to play basketball. But that's a different story in and of itself. Um, so those are the Galatians. That's the people in the general area that he was talking to. Paul had visited there a few times, and now he's writing to them, trying to explain a few details. And so he's still in this "I can't believe you're doing this" kind of phase in his argument, um, getting sucked into believing you have to be a Pharisee, or in modern terms, you have to be Orthodox in order to be acceptable to God. And that's one of the main points in his talking here, is that we don't need the man-made traditions that are added to what is the written Torah, God's Torah, um, in order to be acceptable to God, and especially in the terms of conversion. It's happening amongst believers here in America, especially down in Southern California. It's prevalent. where Messianics get sucked into going through an Orthodox conversion because they're told they can't really belong, they can't really be part of the tribe unless they convert. Now, the dangerous part is that they are replacing God's commandments with man-made rules, and they are requiring of you to disassociate from Yeshua in order to be accepted into being a member of the Orthodox family, or back then the Pharisee family. That's the big problem. And so Paul's getting back to one of his earlier statements. You know, you stupid Galatians, who put you under spell for all this? So again, oh, foolish Galatians is this is why I'm having a little trouble reading it. So I don't have my reading glasses on. There we go. Okay. Um, I have to get up close and personal to read the Greek. So it's anoe toi, and don't expect me to repeat that. Oh,
Mm.
lacking understanding, you Gauls. Okay. Rhetorical analysis represents this section, chapter 3, 1 to 4:11, as Paul's presentation of the proofs of his argument, those points designed to persuade his audience to return to their senses. In other words, don't start following people, don't start following um, established religions when they ask you to deny the primacy of God's written commandments. Um, and it's you're being duped, you're being led astray, you are being um, in a trance, following the wrong thing. So who has bewitched you? Ebaskanen, it's all Greek to me. To speak ill of one, to slander, to traduce him, to cause humiliation or disgrace by making malicious and false statements, to bring evil on one by feigning praise or an evil eye, to charm, to bewitch. The term bewitched refers to the evil impact of spells or the evil eye, a jealous look with magical efficacy. At least that's how the tradition explains it. Okay. Um, and that's a traditional explanation of the evil eye. Basically, jealousy, hating somebody or wishing ill on somebody because they've succeeded in something that you want to succeed. Okay.
Mm.
Um, that you should not obey the truth. This is the frustration of every leader of Torah and Halakha, that even after teaching the truth, there are those who chase after other things that proclaim to be true but are not. And that is my commentary on this. And and I've had many frustrations where people have come to the congregation, started learning, getting up to speed, developing a sense of being part of the congregation, and then get sucked sideways into thinking they have to convert to Orthodox in order to really belong,
Mm.
and that's not the case. And I've yet to find somebody that's actually been improved by making that conversion. Usually, you see more of an empty soul than a fully enlivened person. Okay. Um, in Galatia, some of Paul's converts had sold themselves out, exchanging their allegiance to Jehovah for the legal fences built by the Pharisaic authorities. Understanding this, Paul calls some among the Galatian community bewitched, a very strong term meaning duped, as if magically put under a spell. This is a commentary. Um, and I pretty much agree with what's being said here. Um,
Excuse me. Mhm.
in Galatia, some of Paul's converts had sold. I just did that, didn't I? Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
Before whose eyes, perhaps a remez, a hint to Yeshayahu, Isaiah 11:10, On that day, the root of Yishai, Jesse, uh, which stands as a banner for the peoples, the Goyim will seek him out, and the place where he rests will be glorious. Okay. Um, okay. Another interpretation of and unto him shall the obedience yichas of the peoples be him to whom the nations of the world will flock. Um, it's all Greek, and it says the root of Jesse that standeth for an ensign of the peoples. Sounds like a song from some group. Unto him shall the nations seek. Isaiah 11:10, out of quoting from Genesis Rabbah, or explained as in Genesis Rabbah 99:8, based on Bereshit Genesis 49:10. Um, so what does all this mean? Before your very eyes, Yeshua the Messiah was clearly portrayed by me, Shaul, as having been put to death on the stake as a criminal, reference to Matthew 10:38, in your place. This is the central fact and the faith seed of born again living. Its significance is unpacked in the next four verses and more generally in the rest of the letter. The main implication is that the Judaizers' legalistic rule following is a tragic exercise in futility. The Galatians should wake up from their stupor and not be taken in by it. This is a strongly worded from Dr. Stern in his commentary. Um, so the warning is there. Don't get sucked in. Don't get sucked in that you have to convert to be acceptable to God. It doesn't work that way. Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Questions, comments, rebukes on on verse 1. I know it's kindly strongly worded, but it's
Did
when
you?
you're dealing with basically a life and death issue. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Did you say Turkey earlier?
Yes, modern day Turkey
Modern.
is the region where Galatia, the Roman province of Galatia, was at.
Um, I have a question on that.
Yeah,
Is I just recently, I thought I heard that is that the oh gosh, I can't even think right now. Like the kingdom of Hasatan, or where he's gonna return to?
it's hard to say for sure because there's all sorts of things that aren't quite right. And that can be anything from Hollywood to Iran at this point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's kind of right up there.
Um,
I was
and it's
going
going to
with
be
that.
interesting to see how that all forms and plays out. So, our job isn't necessarily to predict with certainty, but to recognize it when it happens.
Okay, thank you.
So there's, again, there's even though we're closer now than ever before to the bad days and the return, and then followed by the return of Messiah, which is a good thing. Um, the exact details and how we can discern when it's near is still a little bit fluid. We have the basics, we're doing it now, where it's very common for peoples and organizations and isms and schisms
Yeah,
to deny God, um, to promote a different ideology, um, and to try to take us away from following after the ways of God. So the lesson here in to the Galatians is very much appropriate for us. Don't get sucked into thinking that you have to abide by man-made rules. And we
yeah,
have to, even though he didn't really follow his own edict, but we have to keep reminding ourselves, um, the the calling of sola scriptura, which means only the scriptures, only the Bible, and the defense Martin Luther made when he said, unless I be shown in the scriptures, I won't be convinced. Okay.
Mm.
And so we need to be careful. And there's major wars going on this in this result because there are a lot of things that are being preferred and declared equal to, if not superior to, what we have in our Bibles. Um, and
Yeah.
there are people, well-meaning people, who are deceived, who are trying very hard to convince you that all kinds of non-biblical things are just as valuable, if not even more important, than the scriptures itself. So, this is the time where we need to be stubborn. We need to be convinced, and we need to um, have our facts together and our understanding together. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and
yeah, go
that
ahead.
evil, speaking of being equal to, on that evil eye, and is that the thing that has to do with that triangle, that evil eye? Um,
Um, not necessarily. There are some religious uh, pictures that have an eye in a triangle, and I think some of it even has a sunburst of some sort down below
yeah,
that. It's supposed to represent, at least from what I understand, the all-seeing eye of God. God sees everything.
yeah.
The difficulty, of course, that doesn't come. You know, the eyes of God, do look to and fro on the earth. Okay, it says that, but
Yeah.
we're not supposed to make an idol out of a picture of an eye inside a triangle, and then you somehow think that benefits us if we look at it or if we use it for some religious purpose. Yeah, that's not the
Oh,
point. Um,
okay. So my son has a group of friends, and even his cousin. Now, he just the other day. In fact, I don't know if you can see it. It's right here. There's this. Can you see? Can you see me still?
no, the
Oh,
text is up
well,
on the screen.
he's got this gown or something. He called it a costume, but he said it's kind of out of a game. It's kind of a game, but he has that, and then also he had some kind of staff, and then he has those dice. So when you were talking about being equal to and the evil eye and the being charmed and spells, I'm not really sure what he's doing. Like I can't really ask him because him and I, we cannot have any conversation about anything.
Okay.
But our relationship is getting worse and worse. Like I'm just gonna use the word worse because there's
Yeah.
no respect.
Yeah, it sounds a little off that he'd be using a robe and a staff.
Yeah, I said the same thing.
I don't know if he's cosplaying and it's just one of the characters in the game he's playing,
Yeah, something.
or if he's thinking that for some reason he is promoting himself as being more spiritually powerful or adept by doing that kind of stuff. I don't know.
I
Um,
don't either. But
but
it's
just this is a spiritual battle, so pray
yeah.
for spiritual results.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not up to you to make a change, but it's up to you to pray for. You see it, it's happening in front of you, so it's basically the ball's in your court to be praying about it.
Yeah,
But
yesterday is the first time I really did because ever since, and I keep seeing it because it's sitting right here on his couch. And when he
mm,
brought the staff home, he left it over there in the corner by the door, and I was like, oh, in the morning, I was like, I almost wanted to pray over that staff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to feel about it. He said it's a game thing, so but yesterday when I was driving, I just decided that I was gonna pray on that.
mhm,
So okay,
yeah,
pray, all right,
yeah, you can always you can fight fire with fire. You can pray and ask that God do things, fix things.
okay,
That his understanding would be opened up to what he's really dealing with, and it's it's a spiritual war. It's a spiritual
yeah,
battle. So make your battle
yeah.
in the spirit, not you don't have to try to hit them over the head with that stick.
Oh no, I can't.
But it's a prayer thing. We need to
Okay.
ask God. I'll tell you what, before we sign off for the day, let's take a moment and pray for your son.
Yeah.
And okay,
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay.
okay, let's get back to our study here in verse 2.
Yeah.
Okay. I want you to know from you, sorry, I want to know from you just this one thing. Someone's mad when they say it that way. I just want to know this one thing. Did you receive the Spirit through legalistic observance of Torah commandments or by trusting in what you heard and being faithful to it? So, how did you receive, the Spirit of God? How did you receive this salvation? If it is by observing rules, then you did it the wrong way. Because you have to look upon what is the trick. Okay, Isaiah 53:10. What is the trick? If you look upon the sacrifice of Messiah and you ask God to make that sacrifice count for you, then He will make it count for you. Okay, and that's what you need to keep focused on, not your performance to somebody else's standard of keeping rules and regulations, but rather it's how to, that moment when you embraced what Yeshua did for you. That's the center of where you need to start, and you need to keep returning to that. Okay, we grow from there. Yes, we learn and we get better. That's what Acts 15 is all about. Get into a synagogue and hear Torah every week. The reading of Torah every week. So we're supposed to learn and grow, but we should never forget where we started.
Amen.
Okay.
Okay. Rabbi,
Yes.
may I know, and I don't understand, say, just, how to say, I want to know from you just this one thing. I don't know what this one thing. And then ask fine. I'm sorry, can you explain?
Okay. This is Paul writing a letter to a group of people that he is urgently concerned about. Okay. So he's basically using a phrase. Look, I just want to know this one thing from you. Did the Spirit of God tell you to become Pharisees in order to live a correct life? Now, in true human fashion, he says, I want you to know just one thing. Then he goes and tells you several other things as well. So understand it's the part of the urgency of Paul to warn people that they're off in a wrong direction.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So it's one of those things where, yeah, you understand where he's coming from, but it's not entirely literally correct. There's only one question. This would be a much shorter letter if it was only one question or one issue. Okay. So yeah, you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt, that it's not just one only question, but it's basically the beginning of the meat of the issue. To whom is your allegiance? To whom do you follow? Is it man-made traditions or is it God's own word? And that's going to direct how you live your life. Okay. If you think following man-made rules is the only thing that matters, then you're going to be following all kinds of man-made things, and you'll end up very frustrated and very, very fractured, running in different directions all at once. But if you stick to following what God has says, you'll be focused and you'll be organized. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a linguistic thing. Okay. In fact, let me continue on that. I want you to know from you just this one thing. Okay. What Shaul does here is very Jewish. He announces that he's about to ask just one question, then asks five. Because as you go through the letter, he asks other questions. It's not just the one thing. So it's I think my count from a ways back, or that was Dr. Stern's count on this quotation. He asks five. So it's um, so yeah, you have to receive that as a humanism, a human style of explaining something. I just want to know this one thing, and then he keeps asking other questions.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Acts 10, verse 44. Kepha was still saying these things when the Ruach HaKodesh fell on all who were there, um, hearing the message. All the believers from the circumcision faction who had accompanied Kepha were amazed that the gift of the Ruach HaKodesh was also being poured out on the Goyim, for they heard them speaking in tongues and praising God. Kepha's response was, is anyone prepared to prohibit these people from being immersed in water? After all, they have received the Ruach HaKodesh just as we did. And he ordered that they be immersed in the name of Yeshua, the Messiah, and they asked Kepha to stay with them for a few days. So this is Acts chapter 10, starts with a misdirection, where the spirit of where the spirit says, arise, Peter, kill and eat, because he had this vision of all kinds of unclean things. And and Peter answers three times, no, 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 that's Meshuggah. I don't do that stuff. And then three Gentiles came to visit him at the house where he was staying, and he understands then, oh, okay, I get it. Three visions, three goy. I'm supposed to follow them and do what the Spirit is saying. So this is the moment where officially um, the the pouring out of the Spirit of God began on Gentiles as well as Jews, and Peter took this to understand that that was God's point. There's no difference between Jew and Gentile as far as belonging to God and being full of His Spirit. There's no special inside avenue for Jewish people. It's also available for people who aren't Jewish. Um, there is a natural advantage in Romans 3 to being Jewish in that you grew up learning the Torah and the commandments, and you have the mechanisms and the habits and the traditions that help you along with keeping the commandments, which Gentiles who are new to the whole thing need to learn. And so there's a natural advantage there, but there's no superiority between Jew and Gentile. Okay. Also, 1 Corinthians 1, verse 21. Moreover, it is God who sets both us and you in firm union with the Messiah. He has anointed us, put His seal on us, and given us His Spirit in our hearts as a guarantee for the future. And again, 2 Corinthians 5:5. Moreover, it is God who has prepared us for this very thing, and as a pledge, He has given us His Spirit. Okay. The phrase, by the works of the law or by the hearing of faith. Okay, so you have a juxtaposition here. Are we justified by the works of the law or by the hearing of faith? Masa'e HaTorah, the works of the law, a Pharisaic term referring to the actions of the rabbis, which set precedents for their rules. Paul, argues from the indisputable empirical fact that they have received the Spirit in order to convince them that no further validating action is required to ensure their status as God's children. Having once entered God's court, why should anyone wish to seek for an alternative form of admittance? Okay, that's a commentary. And I think it's been well stated here. To place more emphasis on man-made traditional approach to how you keep the commandments or what you do in order to be, quote, holy, unquote. You miss the point when you follow the man-made rules. You should stick to what God says and only what God says. The man-made rules might be helpful in some cases, but you do want to look at it with a little bit of caution to these traditions because one, they're not really necessary, and two, the man-made rules, that is, not really necessary, and two, you might get pulled sideways if you start putting too much emphasis and value on the man-made rules. Okay. Another commentary. In my reading and studying of the Hebrew scriptures, I have yet to find one place that requires us to submit to the authority of those that, one, add to or change the teachings of the written Torah, and two, refer to the law of Moses not as an authoritative code of law, but as a mere source of law for the purpose of deriving new laws. And this is a very wise argument, by the way.
Mm.
And we need to be very careful to keep this in our mind, okay? That there should be no adding or changing to the teachings of the Torah. And the Torah of God, the law of Moses, is not simply a source material for making new rules and new laws. Okay. So that's very, very important for our sanity, our rescue from bad doctrine. And you can pretty much guarantee almost everything that's a bad doctrine works on these two points, that something other than the written commandment is more important than the written commandment. And the other is that the written commandment is only a source, a jumping off spot for making new laws.
Which is
so very important, those 2 points. Okay. The Holy Spirit, or the Ruach HaKodesh, was given through trusting in what was heard about the Messiah. Okay, and we have citations here, Acts 1, Yochanan, and Romans. But not through legalistic rule following. Okay, there's another Dr. Stern comment. He likes legalism, and there's some value to that point, because all the rules of the Pharisees, all the rules of the Orthodox, are legalistic rule following, and that doesn't get us closer to God. They'll claim it does, but it doesn't make us closer to God. Okay, the hearing of faith, or literally by report of faith out of the Englishman's Greek New Testament. It compares well with Romans 10:17. So trust comes from what is heard, and what is heard comes through the word proclaimed about the Messiah. So Paul, in this moment, touches on the moment of the Galatian people hearing the good news of Messiah and embracing it and accepting it, that this was true. And the result was the receiving of the Spirit of God, which reinforces that it was true, that Yeshua is indeed Messiah, and we need to seek him for our salvation and acknowledge his sacrifice for our salvation. Okay. Questions, comments, rebukes on verse 2 or anywhere else?
Yeah, Rabbi, going back just what you're saying about the adding and subtracting, I know I always have problems with this, because basically when you're talking about the Pharisees and other writings, are you talking about the Talmud or the oral law?
Yes, the difference being is basically in the definitions there. You have God's written commandments. We call that Torah, written Torah. Then you have the Pharisees and the modern Orthodox, who have invented their own Torah, which they call oral Torah. And they even in modern circumstances, within their own statements, they have made the statement that there's no going back from disobeying the oral Torah. You can't be you really can't be forgiven or redeemed if you mess up on the oral Torah. Funny thing is if you mess up on the written Torah, you can go to God and seek repentance. But the oral Torah, they have made more important by saying that it's deadly if you disobey the oral Torah. So as believers, we need to be very, very, very careful to differentiate God's written Torah and the man-made oral Torah. Okay.
One other
And-
question now, because I've heard it also said that I'm not I'm not familiar with the Talmud. I don't even have a
yeah.
Talmud Bible in my home. Um, but I've heard also too that it does have um substantial information that it will help give you
Yeah.
as far as how to do various things. For instance, putting up a mezuzah, the prayers, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, but how do you differentiate what is good, what is not?
Okay. You start with what God stated. Okay. You have the commandments. The Talmud is simply a compilation of a couple different books that were put together. You have the Mishnah, which
Mhm.
is the earliest of the books that was compiled roughly. It was well quoting teachers from before the time of Yeshua through after the time of Yeshua, and it was in the process of being compiled during the time of Yeshua. So it makes an interesting snapshot of religious life at the time Messiah walked the earth. And somewhere around 95 CE or 110 or 20 or something like that. I don't remember the dates for sure. I wasn't there. Um, but that was followed by a follow-up expansion on the and the mission is basically a compilation of rabbinic quotations and citations, certain lessons and discussions on oral Torah, and it's extremely useful for us because this was the state of religious life in Israel at the time Messiah walked the earth. So it gives us a lot of good insights to what was going on. Following that, there was an addendum. Well, it became an addendum. You have the Mishnah, then you have the Gemara,
Mhm.
and it's an expansion and commentary on the Mishnah. And then later on, that those were kind of combined with more additional commentary from later writers, and that became what we call the Talmud. And generally speaking, you have two main versions of the Talmud. You have what's called the Babylonian Talmud, which is considered the officially, by depending on who you talk to, is the more official version, and you have the Jerusalem Talmud, which is generally considered less official. Although it's kind of interesting because there is a citation in the Jerusalem Talmud by a character called James the Just, um, and there's a suggestion, there's an implication that maybe this James the Just is the James the brother of Yeshua, and he added his commentary into the Mishnah and Gemara, which became part of the incorporated part of the Jerusalem Talmud. Um, so it's kind of
Wouldn't wou-
interesting.
wouldn't these be like exactly what we're talking about? Like addition or adding to the written
Yeah,
Torah?
yeah,
Oh, they
exactly.
are.
This is
Oh,
why
okay.
you have to look at it with caution. Is it asking you
Ah.
to do something new or different, or telling you to not do what God said to do?
Oh,
Okay, so that's the litmus test. Did God tell us to do something that now the rabbinic writings, the Mishnah, the Talmud, whatever, are they telling you to do something different, or to not do what God said to do, or are they telling you to do things that God did not say you must be doing? Um, you know, that's you need to make that differentiation,
okay.
and we need to be praying for wisdom that we can navigate all this verbiage. And there's no end of rabbinic or Orthodox writings of people developing understandings of what this, variations on what the scriptures meant when it said what it said, and variant applications of how to apply that, which may or may not coincide with what the actual written commandments say. Okay.
I I have one other question, Rabbi. What about, like, for example, like the translation back into Hebrew or Aramaic or Spanish or English? Is that considered misinterpreting what was being written, or?
It can be. The difficulty with translations is that you can never do an exact word for word translation from one
Right.
language to another, unless
Right.
they're really close sister languages. But I learned this the
Oh.
hard way when I taught through Deuteronomy. I thought, I know what I'm doing when it comes to translating, and I'm going to do Deuteronomy exactly word for word. And that came out to be the most tedious mangling of how to convey an idea from Hebrew to English,
Yeah.
because it doesn't work. Hebrew words are different. Hebrew syntax, how you organize words and phrases into a sentence structure, is different than English. And so
Exactly.
if you do an exact word for word translation, it comes out pretty stiff and hard to understand. And so I had, about halfway through that, I finally gave up and went back to doing a dynamic translation, conveying the meaning exactly as exactly you can, even if it isn't exactly word for word what's in the Hebrew. So to convey the meaning more exactly and not just word by word. Because if you do word by word, you can translate a word completely out of context.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
you're aware, we all know more than one language.
Yeah.
You can say, one word in English is not exactly the same word in a different language. And
That's true.
and even how you set up the sentence structure, differs. In English, we qualify an object before we name the object. Like,
Wait.
the green house.
Oh.
Okay. We qualify the object before we name the object. In Hebrew and in Spanish and a lot of other languages, you name the object and then you qualify it. So you call it Casa Verde, or
Right.
house green, right?
Yeah,
Rather
I get it.
than greenhouse. And if you tried to translate greenhouse directly into Spanish, it makes no sense. You know,
Oh,
it, I mean, if you're, you can work out what you meant to say. When you're reading it, you can kind of work out what they meant to say, but the syntax, it's clunky. It doesn't work right. So when you're translating, even from Greek to English or from Hebrew to English, the translation's clunky. I'm going a long way around the barn for this, but
yeah.
there are there's a lot of information coming out as more and more research is being done, that a lot of the New Testament Bible may have had a Hebrew origin,
Oh.
and in some cases, it's more clear than others. For example, there's a Hebrew Matthew that doesn't have. There's a historical reference to Matthew being in Hebrew in early writings, but the text that everybody's using comes from the 1500s. So
Hmm.
understand, that's the text we have, but it may not be the most accurate version, and it's not unheard of that in copying a text over and over and from an original to a copy for distribution, mistakes happen. And
Right. Okay.
so you have to be careful in how you're looking at what the text says, and you have to understand the context of the phraseology in the original language, and then do your best to convey a meaning. that matches that. Okay, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Long ways. Okay, verse 3. Okay. Are you that stupid? Why are you guys all looking at me when having begun with the Spirit's power, do you think you can reach the goal under your own power? Foolish. The Hebrew scriptures define a fool as one who does not delight in sound teaching and discernment, but one who scorns good sense. A definition culled from reading these two messages out of Proverbs 1:7 and Proverbs 18:2. The fear of Adonai is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. That is absolutely true, and it's so sad.
Yep.
18:2. A fool takes no pleasure in trying to understand. He only wants to express his own opinion. Yes, and there are people and groups that do that. And you can usually, it's these two comments, these two proverbs, identify it very easily. If you're good at remembering those two proverbs, you're going to find yourself an easier time picking out those people who prize their opinion or trying to win a conversation without having a good understanding of what the text actually says. Okay, being made perfect. Okay, epiteleo, telos as in telephone, meaning being brought to perfection, or actually brought to a conclusion, being taken to an endpoint. It's actually a more literal definition. If you have been filled with God's Spirit upon hearing the true good news, how can Pharisaism or Rabbinic Orthodox Judaism make you more saved or more acceptable to God? You have already received proof that Hashem has justified you through faith. Why are you looking for men's approval, that is, ritual conversion or circumcision with quotations, really? The works of the flesh, works of the law. Note, not talking about the biblical commandment, including biblical circumcision. Okay, so when we're saying that we're not interested in pursuing man-made laws, we have to be careful that we don't accidentally mix in that we are against God's given commandments, His written Torah. Which even includes biblical circumcision. But the answer to that is found in Acts 15. No one should compel anyone to be circumcised, but they are to learn. The only thing that someone's compelled to do is to clean up your act on 4 different points of bad paganism, and then go to the synagogue and you sit there and you learn every week where Torah is read. So the other half of the commandment to the Gentile, actually for all of us, is to get in the synagogue every week and learn God's ways. Okay, and if somewhere down the road, and those of us who've been around shul long enough know this, you're sitting around, after the services are over, and you're talking about the portion for the week or something, and somebody just happens to mention out of nowhere, God's telling me I need to be kosher. And I'm rejoicing in that in my mind, because that means they're listening to God. And if God puts it on your mind that you need to be circumcised, you can do that. You're not making a conversion to anything, and that's the important point to understand. You are simply obeying God's commandment. Okay, so you can if you wish, but to ask somebody to do it before they are willing or wanting to is more religious activity than obeying God. And matter of fact, that was determined in Acts 15. Okay, because Acts 15 started with the statement that these Gentiles who are believers must become Pharisees and be circumcised, or else they can't be saved. That's the opening phrase. Okay, And that was decided that was a false statement. So if anybody tells you you cannot fully belong to God unless you are circumcised and join their particular group, no, that's not the right way to look at it. Okay. It'll happen when God tells you it's the right time for it. Okay. Okay.
Rabbi James?
Questions, comments? So, yeah.
Yep, I was gonna have a question.
Okay.
Um, so the whole talking in tongues thing,
Hmm.
I don't believe in it kind of. What does that mean exactly? Like I go to a place, like I've attended congregations and they talk in tongues and they almost get like upset if you don't do it.
Yeah.
Like they pray, like it's like that's the only thing they want you to do. And every time I hear somebody, it's almost like they're just repeating the same thing over and over and over, weeks and weeks and weeks for every single time I go. And it pisses me off and I can't handle it.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
Oh,
The you have to understand there's a historical use for tongues, and you also have was it First Corinthians 14 where Paul provides some instructions about the use of the tongues. Okay, and there are basically two uses for the tongue. One is evangelism, declaring the wonders of God. We see this in Acts chapter 2. Um, and you also have yeah, tongues as a prayer language, which you also see in 1 Corinthians 14. Okay. Um, so it's a prayer language, and Paul recommends that your prayer language should be more personal than public. In fact, he makes a statement if everyone is together in one place and they're all speaking in tongues, and somebody who doesn't know what's going on walks in, he's going to think you're all crazy or possessed, okay,
mm-hmm.
or both. And and so Paul's recommendation is if you're going to speak in tongues in the congregation, two or three at most, and only with interpretation, because otherwise uh, no one is being growing in understanding God by hearing a tongue unless there's an interpretation of it. And
Right.
and I can tell the difference. And
Yeah.
as way back, God had used me for interpreting tongues. And it's one of those things that it happens when he makes it happen. It's not something I can command and control.
Yeah.
But it happened to me many times to where I got comfortable with the idea that someone wants to speak in tongues, I can provide an interpretation, and it usually
Mhm.
works if it's
Yeah.
truly a tongue. But if it's
Yeah.
somebody who is inventing verbiage,
Yeah.
it doesn't work. And I can
Right.
it's yeah, to me it's like to me here I hear it like it's just empty phrases, not even words, but empty syllables. And
Yeah.
the sound's coming out, but there's nothing attached to it. Okay.
Yeah.
And if someone's
There's
speaking in tongues, there should be someone there who says, okay, I get this. I know what they're talking about. Okay.
okay.
I know what they're
Yeah.
saying. And usually it's not, in most cases, when you get into these places where they insist that there has to be some sort of interpretation all these times, they usually express it as a prophecy rather than a tongue. Because Paul again specifies you're speaking to God. So an interpretation of the tongue would be what somebody is saying to God. Okay. But
Okay.
usually in those places, the interpretation comes out as a prophecy, God speaking to people. So sorry, I'm way off on that
No.
topic.
No, but to okay. So it's a language that's like you said between only ourselves and God. And um it's also I've also heard this that it's a language that Hasatan doesn't understand. And
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are, you know, remember it was the group of the followers of Yeshua who are the ones that were given that tongue on Acts chapter 2. Everybody else in the audience from all those other places around the Roman world stated the amazement that they know these guys are not from where we came from, where we come from, but we hear in our language the wonderful works of God. Okay, so this is instructive for us that this should be our expectation when we hear a message in a tongue. It's intended for somebody else who's going to hear it in their own language, unless it's translated by someone who hears the message and receives through their spirit what that message means. And so the idea, and this is what Paul confirms in 1 Corinthians 14, that it's a tongue is a message from the speaker to God. Okay. More in the way of giving thanks than it is giving instruction on a horizontal level. It's a vertical level.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Let's get back to verse 4. Okay. Have you suffered so much for nothing? If that's the way you think, your suffering certainly will have been for nothing. Okay, well, we'll have to explain that. Okay, suffered so many things. Although not specified, we can assume the Galatian Gentiles suffer the same persecution and misunderstanding we suffer from family, work, non-Messianic Jews, and non-Messianic believers. Okay. And that's kind of my way of explaining what Paul is using in his speaking or his writing. We suffer problems, persecutions and misunderstanding, and it comes from everybody around us, from our family, our coworkers, Jews who are not embracing Yeshua as Messiah, and even non-Jewish people who embrace Messiah. We call Christians. Even they give us grief, okay, because we're too Jewish. And then the Orthodox look at us and say, "You're not Jewish enough." So the important thing is be certain and be confident in what God has called you to be. If you're certain, if you're confident, none of their "you're not good enough unless" kind of arguments won't work. And that's what I'm hoping and praying for all of us, that we're so confident in our relationship with God, with our relationship with Yeshua, that there's no crack in the armor that someone can try to wiggle in some sort of doubt and convince you that you got to do their thing in order to be acceptable. Okay. Okay, so see, an appeal to the reader's own experience would constitute the ultimate eyewitness argument and was rhetorically effective. Okay. If indeed it was in vain, from his quote there, if you chase a different good news, then your efforts in the real good news are wasted, such as in Yechezkel, Ezekiel 18:24. On the other hand, when the righteous person turns away from his righteousness and commits wickedness by acting in accordance with all the disgusting practices that the wicked person does, will he live? None of the righteous deeds he has done will be remembered. For the trespasses and sins he has committed, he will die. Okay, that's a pretty strong statement. But this is part of what we have to be warned against. If we turn from following the correct way in Messiah Yeshua, we put ourselves up to being to facing God's punishment for turning away from the plan that he designed, for the methodology that he designed. So it's a very real warning to all of us. Okay. Another commentator, sometimes speakers will hold attention by presenting and then correcting a statement. And I've seen that happen before. And sometimes, somebody will misstate something, and you're going, wait, that doesn't sound right. Wait, hey, hold on there. You're going the wrong direction. Then they'll come back in a minute or two and correct what they said, just to get your attention and get you focused. And so you kind of want to look at Paul's, you know, I don't think he's saying you guys are all non-believers because you're not, you're not doing all the right things right now. But rather he's saying that this is, you guys are starting to act like non-believers, and that should provoke people's attention and focus. Like, wait, what do you mean by that? Then he'll go back and explain we need to, you know, uh, trust what God has done for us rather than relying on our own efforts to make God love us, something like that. So in that case, the statement, you foolish Galatians, sort of a knock up the side of the head to get everyone's attention. Okay. I think it is a warning. Why would you suffer the persecution of being a believer, only to throw away your perseverance to embrace Phariseeism just because they tell you that you need to? Okay. This all comes down to the original sin. Okay. Because that's what Hasatan said. Oh, God didn't really mean that. He didn't really say that. That was the beginning of the lie, challenging what God said. Okay. We know what God said. We have his word. Okay. And it's given to us in all of what is given to us to read. Okay. We have the Torah, we have the Tanakh. We have the Torah, we have the Tanakh, and somebody's putting up a thing there. We have the Torah, we have the Tanakh, we have the Brit Chadashah. We have all we need. Okay. So if someone comes along with something else that gives you a different conclusion, excuse me, you need to be real careful and not get sucked into that. Okay. Just because they tell you. And most all of the bad doctrines are based on because I tell you. That's pretty much it. Okay. Questions, comments, rebukes on verse 4 or anything else that we've covered so far? Okay, let's move on. What about God who supplies you with the Spirit and works miracles among you? Does he do it because of your legalistic observance of Torah commandments or because you trust in what you heard and are faithful to it? Okay. Paul is again saying the same thing he's done in the last couple of verses, juxtapositioning, I should say, trusting what God has told us to do and to what to believe and how to walk, or following Torah commandments. I'd be more specific. Oral Torah, the rabbinic, the Pharisaic additions that are done, because we're bidden by God, we're bidden by Yeshua to keep the commandments of God. So I think I'd probably attack this translation a little bit differently. But okay, miracles, dunamis in Greek, which means strength, power, ability. These are miracles. The works of the law or by the hearing of faith. Is it by works, erg, of law, voyo, it's my Greek, nomon, or by report, akoi, hearing of faith, out of Englishman's Greek New Testament. You have three different words there being used. Okay. The same argument as in verse 2. Did you receive or was supplied the Spirit by observance of man-made rules or trusting in the good news? Okay. Trusting in the good news is how we receive the Spirit. trusting that Yeshua is indeed Messiah, and he came for us, and his death counts for us. Death and resurrection counts for us. Okay. And that's the good news. And through that, God gave us his Spirit. Okay. Paul continues to press his main point to the Galatians. You have already received acceptance into the family of God. You do not need man's approval and acceptance to be a part of Israel. Not only does nomos, Greek, not always mean Torah, in Second Temple Hebrew, the word Torah does not always mean God's instructions. The Mishnah refers to the decisions from the Sanhedrin as the law going forth, starting from the Mishnah Sanhedrin, quoting Isaiah chapter 2. Okay. And so, so what we need to understand in the text of this verse, especially, Torah does not always mean God's commandments, but rather instruction in its basic sense. It does not guarantee it's God's instructions. We joke about this all the time, when we buy something from the store and we have to take it home and put it together. It's in our family, it's a running joke that we have to look at the Torah of the thing that we're assembling together, because that's literally what it means, instruction.
The instructions.
Yeah, written instructions. Okay. You can follow the written instructions. They don't always make sense when you read them the first time, but you can do your own, but you don't know for sure that it's done right. And sometimes you do it right, and sometimes you don't do it right when you follow your own instructions. Since God gave us his instructions, we are wise to follow it. Okay. Okay. So the Sanhedrin defines Torah as the law going forth, literally from the mouth of Moshe, through the mouth of Moshe. But then they add the oral Torah, which is the sayings of the rabbis, the sayings of the sages, and they try to make that equal to God's written commandments as given through Moses. So, anyways, that's our that's our study for today. Any questions, comments, rebukes?
Yeah, earlier you said something about original sin. I mean, only because I remember original sin, like maybe from being Catholic at one point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I really do remember that, but I thought that they used to baptize babies because they were born from original sin or something. I don't really know because it's been like so long. I don't even know that. But is there anything to that or?
Well, baptizing babies was a religious way of assuaging your fears in case something happened that baby did not survive to an age to where it can make a conscious acceptance of a relationship with God.
Thought about that.
But that's how things developed. They took the baptism of adults who hear the good news and accept it, and then are then baptized to show to make a physical statement that you believe the spiritual word, and that got transmitted into being a religious act that is supposed to save babies, when there's no such statement in the scripture itself.
Right, because then that changes what the bar bat mitzvah means, right?
Yeah, the bar and bat mitzvah is a cultural thing. It's not commanded by God.
Oh.
There is no commandment that you must do. A girl has to do a bat mitzvah when she's 12, and a boy when he's 13.
Oh, right. It's not, you don't have to do it, but in my perception is because that's when they change from
Yeah.
when they're what do you call it? When they're
Yeah.
responsible for their own actions at that point
Yeah.
or something?
They are culturally considered an adult when the girls hit 12 and boys hit 13. And the bar mitzvah or the bat mitzvah is the activity, the religious activity, which marks that transition from childhood to adulthood. And what you're supposed to be doing is demonstrating in that bar mitzvah, that bat mitzvah, that you have gained enough knowledge that you can take your turn reading out of the Torah scroll, and that you can take your turn and join with the congregation in discussing the meaning of the scriptures. Because that's exactly what the bar mitzvah and what the bat mitzvah do. You learn you learn to read the Hebrew text, um, out of from the Torah portion and from the Haftarah. You might do the Brit Chadashah in a messianic circumstance, and you can you can use English for that or whatever language you feel like. But then you're expected to expound a little bit on what you read to show that you have knowledge and
Okay.
capability to read it and understand it and explain it. So that's the purpose of the bar mitzvah. That's the purpose of the bat mitzvah. And then it's culturally considered that you've attained adulthood because you've demonstrated the capability to do these things. So for those of you who have never done a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, I would recommend you consider it because
Even as adults?
even as adults, yeah. The
What?
reason I do that is because in order to do a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, you're going to have to learn some Hebrew. And the more you learn in the Hebrew, the more you learn how to read the scriptures, and the more you learn how to understand the scriptures. So it's for your benefit, even to learn enough Hebrew just so you can read your portion and learn enough Hebrew that you can understand what your portion is, because that's your launch pad. That's your starting point to where you can continue in that course of learning week by week by week. And the more you study the scriptures, the more you study the Hebrew, the more you understand it, and it can apply the scriptures more adequately. And you grow and you get better at it. So if you haven't done it yet, I recommend you consider it. Even as an
Oh,
adult, you can do this. Just because
okay.
just because you start to learn the skills you need as an adult to understand Hebrew, because that's where most of the Bible comes from is Hebrew,
Right.
and so the more you know that, the better you're able to understand it, and the less you're going to be a victim of someone else's bad translation or deliberate misdirection. So that's my two
Okay.
shekels.
Okay. Okay.
Any
Mhm.
questions? Any other questions, comments, or rebukes?
Yeah,
Yes.
Gene, what did you mean? I wasn't quite sure in this last paragraph here. Torah does not always mean God's instructions.
Oh,
Let's see. Not only does Nomos Greek not only
yeah.
mean Torah.
The use of the word itself, nomos in Greek and Torah in Hebrew, do not necessarily mean God's scripture. We use it as such, but because of context, we know what we're talking about. Okay, when we're gathering, we're talking about Torah. We know we're talking about God's scriptures. Or when we're using it, euphemistically as instructions for putting something together that you just bought. We jokingly call that Torah, which is actually an adequate use of the word. But the idea is the word Torah by itself does not necessarily always mean Bible. Okay, this is Bible, since Torah literally means instruction and not specifically Bible.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
that's my point. It doesn't always. So in every context, it does not always mean Torah specifically.
Okay. And then when the word Pentateuch is used, 5 books,
Mhm.
that's referring to Torah. And is there, is that a misnomer, or is that also a valid name for Torah?
Pentateuch comes from the Greek which
Mhm.
means 5 books.
Mhm.
Okay, the 5 books or the five writings. Um, and that's the first 5 books of the Bible. And that's your standard commentary that a lot of people work with. There's several Jewish editions of a Pentateuch that it contains somebody's interpretation and explanation of those scriptures. And it's not uncommon, even in Messianic circles, when we're reading from the Torah portions and we discuss the Torah portions, that someone may have a Pentateuch to use as a source for commentary on what the text that we're discussing can mean. Generally speaking, there's not a lot of insanely wrong stuff that's in the Pentateuch. It's usually a translation. When you get into some of the interpretations in the margins, down below or on the sides, you might run into something a little bit off. But generally speaking, most of the commentary is dealing with how do you translate a particular word.
Mhm.
So it's you can use it, and as you grow in your knowledge of Hebrew, you can start to discern which is a um, religious translation versus a literal translation, and put it that way.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Another
So,
question.
Rabbi, you mentioned the Torah. You say is instruction.
Yeah.
So, who called the Old Testament and New Testament Bible? Who called this? We read the Bible. Who called it?
Okay. It's a development from Christian practice of separating the Bible from um, starting in Deuteronomy and ending in good.
Malachi.
Malachi. My brain keeps wanting to say Micah. That's the wrong guy.
Mm.
Yeah, Malachi. That's the English Bible, but the Hebrew Bible goes from Bereshit, Genesis to Second Chronicles.
Right.
The order of the Bible is stacked differently in a Hebrew Bible, and then in a Christian Bible, it goes all the way to Revelation. So you have different versions of what is a Bible, and there are some people that even goes far to add some of um, the the extra biblical books into the Bible, trying to make it equal with the Bible.
Are you talking about the Apocrypha?
Yeah, the apocryphal books.
Hypocrisy.
Art, stick around. I like you. You're helping me out.
Or even the book of Enos or
Yeah,
It's all part of the Apocrypha.
yeah, is it
yeah.
Yeah, the Maccabees,
Jubilees,
But
all that fun stuff.
yeah, Yehudit or Judith. Yeah.
Yeah.
wasn't the Maccabean War actually real though? Wasn't that
Yes.
between the testaments?
Yeah.
Like
It's yeah,
that's what I got.
the other people that separate the Bible?
yeah.
I mean,
It's interesting because the first chapters are good history. The Maccabees details the history of how Israel got control of its land back again from a historical perspective. Second Maccabees goes into a long discussion of the various kings of Israel and what they did and how they did it. And then there's a third Maccabees, I think, is another history, but it's very difficult. You have to pair it up with uh, um, um,
You're on your own there, Rabbi.
To Josephus.
yeah, you have to pair it up with
Was it Josephus?
Cheryl said Joseph.
Josephus?
Babylon,
Oh.
from Babylon.
Oh,
our prophet that was in Babylon.
Nehemiah, Ezra.
Before then. Um,
Ugh,
Oh my God, we're all stumped.
Very good.
Babylon.
That's right. As soon as we close off, all of us will remember.
Ay,
Daniel.
ay, ay.
oh,
Daniel
No,
has a very
Daniel?
confusing history in
Daniel.
it.
What?
And so does so does 3 Maccabees. And then 4th Maccabees is a story about Judith and her 7 sons. Very sad story. But it exemplifies the need of maintaining fidelity with God, even if it costs you everything.
Uh-huh.
So that's basically yeah. So uh, later versions, some people tried to insert it, some people excluded it. Um, you know, I don't know. I wasn't there. They didn't ask me, so I'm not going to get involved. Okay. Any questions, comments, rebukes? Any others?
Is the Catholic Bible the same as ours? No, huh?
It's got a middle section called the Apocrypha. That's got a
Oh,
lot of other stuff that's not included in the, for lack of a better word, the Protestant Bible.
oh,
And of course, the Tanakh is the three sections of the Bible according to Jewish tradition, which is the Torah, the prophets, and the writings.
okay.
And they're organized in different order than what the Catholic Bible or the Protestant Bible does.
The complete Jewish Bible too are they different?
The complete Jewish Bible follows the order that's traditionally found in the Jewish translations of the Bible.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Rabbi Jin, you mentioned the Bible names after Greek, the translation.
I'm sorry, what?
The we read the Bible scripture named by Bible is from the Greek.
The there are primarily the oldest texts that we have of the New Testament, the Brit Hadashah. The majority are Greek. There are a couple of early translations that were in other languages, some Hebrew. There's a lot of study going on right now with the original language of the New Testament, and there's been some success in basically backwards translating the Greek text to Hebrew, which has a strong suggestion that the original text was Hebrew, but the more common text became Greek. Was
Okay.
done in Greek.
Mhm.
Okay, it's a developing thing. You may hear about it more and more as time goes on, but it's one of those fascinating studies. Um, I'm not willing to absolutely say for an absolute fact that the original texts of the New Testament were originally in Hebrew, but later translated to Greek or not. If they were originally Greek and then people translated otherwise. Um, I'm not in a position to really take a position on that. So, but just understand my understanding is that there's a growing body of scholarship that is suggesting that the earliest versions of the New Testament were actually in Hebrew. But we'll see how that develops.
So I feel like the Catholic changed the Sabbath day to the Sunday. The Greek is kind of like how say established the modern Bible is all from the Greek and the Catholic like this Rome Empire.
Yeah, the translations of the Bible were going on before Catholicism fully developed. The Catholicism entered its era of awakening and becoming in the 3rd century. We have people copying, Bible books well before then.
Mhm.
But they did change the Sabbath from Sabbath to Sunday.
Someday.
That
Yeah, I
was a
think that's
Catholic, yeah,
yeah.
that was a Catholic edict, and it became a Catholic edict. There was some movement before then to make the change, but there was never a scriptural basis for doing so. And in fact, I did a little research on this. I just did a short internet search on Catholic sources on changing Sabbath to Sunday, changing the Sabbath from God's 7th day to Sunday. And there's a pile of Catholic references that they claim the responsibility. They claim that they have the authority to change that because they're the Catholic Church. They have the authority to change that day of worship from Sabbath to Sunday. And they add the point, which I think is rather cheeky but useful. They declare that anybody who keeps a Sunday Sabbath compared to the 7th day acknowledges the primacy of the Catholic Church.
Mm.
Mhm.
Which, that's a wrong statement, but it's a nice dig on those people who insist that it has to be Sunday without understanding that they need to change their mind.
That statement that what you were just saying about the Catholics stating that they're the ones that have the right to, that is
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
that's actually in a catechism book that
Yes,
I used to have it.
yes, yeah. They claim responsibility for making the change, and thus anybody who follows their change follows them.
Mhm.
Yeah. What I meant to say was it's actually written in a catechism book. Like,
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
my dad, because we used to my dad used to take us to catechism, and we had our catechism books. Like my brothers had them, I had one, and it's written in there. That whole statement
Yeah.
is written in there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's there.
Mhm.
They take that position, and nobody has a legitimate argument against that. I've never heard anyone even get close to succeeding arguing against the fact that it was the Catholic Church that instituted it, and if you follow them, then if you follow the change, you follow them.
Yeah.
But
Because
how do
it
they,
it's
how do
really
they,
cheeky, but I think it's correct.
but what about, again, the statement we've been discussing here as far as, not changing or adding? How do they get away with that?
They got how do you put it? They got over that.
They were
When you
they were
start
well,
changing God's commandments, that are plainly written, you're already beyond hope as far as all the other things that they added and changed. They still, if you don't recognize their authority, then what they've added and changed doesn't matter. It's only if you recognize their authority that you want to stick to what they've changed or added.
Very sad.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, rebukes?
Thank you, Rabbi. Yeah.
Okay, let's close this up. And give me a moment. Let's pray, and then we'll set you loose. Father, thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for the good discussion we had today. And Lord, I ask that you would be with us, walk through us, that we would make use of what we've learned and apply it, and help us to love you more and to walk more closely into what you say, that we can be
Yes.
convinced over and over and over again that you are real and you need to be taken seriously. Thank you for all your goodness. B'Shem Yeshua Moshiinu. Amen.
oh man.
Amen.
All right. Well, Shabbat. It's not Shabbat Shalom.
Wait, Rabbi Dean, don't forget to pray for me and my son.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
And real quick, those little dice that they use, like they have, look, they're right here sitting on the table.
Okay.
Some of them are triangles, some of them are squares, some of them have that round shape right there.
Okay. That's, yeah. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but it's,
I-
if he's using it like it has power, then it's not a good thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. He said it's a game. That's what he says.
Okay. All right. Let me shut off the recording.